Good morning. I'm going to call our Reentry Network Public Safety and Justice Committee to order for our August 1st meeting, and I'm going to begin with asking Camille to call the roll.
All right. Chairperson Chavez?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Member Johnson or Member Binder? Okay, I believe he's around.
We just stepped off the dais, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Member McGowan is absent. Member Burchard?
Here.
Thank you, present. Member O'Neill or Member Silver?
Damon Silver for the Public Defender's Office.
All right, Member Silver is present, thank you. Member Rosen or Member Cabrera? Okay, Member Cabrera is present, thank you. Member Nikolai?
Here.
Present, thank you. Member Little or Member Sheng are absent. Member Terrell?
Present.
Okay, thank you. And Member Dewan or Member Bunduris?
Member Dewan, present.
Present, thank you. Member Gaxiola or Member Ho? Oh, I believe, okay, currently absent. And I'll just circle back to Member Johnson, who is currently in the dais. Present, thank you. Member Fisk or Member Regan?
Member Fisk present.
Okay, Member Fisk is present, thank you. Member Hanson or Member Halcon? Okay, Member Halcon is present, thank you. Member O'Brien or Member Kitchens-Garcia? Currently absent. Member Trinidad? Currently absent. Member Yi?
Present.
Present, thank you. Member Schwan or Member Mukoyama? Currently absent. Member Manley? Absent. Member Loftus or Member Cook? Member Loftus is present, thank you. Member Brahim?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Member Joseph? Present, thank you. Member Wiggins? Present, thank you. Member Miranda? Absent. Member Kendrick? Absent. Member Ellenberg? Absent. Member Temoin? Present, thank you. And Member De La Calle? Absent. Oh, and I believe Member Gaxiola just stepped in, and they are present. Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move to public comment, and this is an opportunity to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, but within the purview of this committee.
We currently have one request to speak online.
Thank you. I'll welcome that speaker.
Okay. So our speaker is Benzi. Benzi, we are unmuting you. You will have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will begin when you begin speaking.
Yes, hello, good morning. I really wish Judge Manley would have been here today, because what I wanted to request of this committee is to see if we could remove him from this committee. And let me explain to you why. My kids, right now, they're being sexually abused. And Judge Manley is standing in the way of there being a screening to confirm the abuse. I mean, my son has already told me, he told me that beginning at the age of 13, that my ex-wife was letting somebody sexually molest him. And the other kids are showing the same type of sexual abuse. And when I reported it, I was retaliated against, and also charges were filed against me, and I didn't even commit a crime. And the whole goal was to get it to Judge Manley's courtroom. And that was to give some sort of fake excuse as to why my kids shouldn't get protected. And that's just wrong. I mean, if you think about it, how is Judge Manley going to have empathy for people who are re-entering society after committing a crime? I mean, that's just, how is he going to do that if he can't even have empathy for children being sexually abused? I mean, it makes no sense for him to be on this committee. I mean, I've written him plenty of letters. I've addressed him on this committee. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what happens to my kids. And I understand he's a big, powerful guy, but you got to draw the line somewhere. I mean, you can do lots of different things, and you can kind of do things, gray area things, but the kids getting sexually abused, you just don't do that. And that's why I was hoping he would be here so he could hear this, and hopefully members of this committee can pass that on to him. But if not, just remove him from this committee. I mean, I've posted a lot of the information online. If you just Google Valerie Houghton, Houghton, sex trafficking. I posted it on several websites. You can get the lowdown of what's going on. And I mean, like, we need to serve an example for everybody, not just for people re-entering society, that it's just this type of offense is wrong, and it shouldn't be tolerated, it shouldn't be covered up, and we need to do something to change it within our society. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I have no other speakers during public comment. Yeah, Camille, I'm gonna assume that's not public comment. I mean, for right now. For now? Oh, okay. Welcome.
Okay, so our next speaker is John. John, please come up to the podium.
And John, the mic is right in that podium. Okay. Yeah, it's very confusing. So, welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Johnson, and I'm here to speak on parole after being reintegrated into society from prison. Anyway, I've spent almost the last 15 years of my life incarcerated in the Pinnacle system, and I've been out 1 year now. I was paroled here to San Jose, and being that I was gone so long that I didn't know, I felt inadequate because I didn't know how to use technology. I didn't know how to use the cell phones, computers, do an email, fill out a job application or anything. And so I was lost. And I was basically, I'm not even from San Jose. So I have no family members, I have no friends, I have nothing that would tie me from here. So if you can imagine, after being gone so long and not having any direction, I didn't know how I was going to make it. So I was depressed, PTSD, and everything else going on. And thank God I found a reentry center. The reentry center, I became an advocate of mental health while incarcerated. And I knew at that moment of my release that I wasn't well, that something was not right, and I had always hid my issues, tried to man up, be the man about it, until it just became crushing. And when I found out about the reentry center, I stayed there. They have the bus, the most wonderful thing I've ever had the pleasure to be involved in. And I stayed there. They were booked up, but I needed to speak to someone about mental health. And I was not going to leave until I spoke to someone. So I stayed there 4 hours. And I was in a corner all by myself, away from everyone, because I had social anxiety and all of these things. A psychiatrist came and spoke with me. I didn't have ID. They somehow made things happen to where I could get Medi-Cal, get my medications that I need to live every day. And Reentry Center has become my family. I made it a point to know every single one of them by name, who I was involved with. It's about 10 of them. They've asked me to come here and speak and just tell my story. I am what you call, I guess, one of the individuals, and my time is running out, one of the individuals who succeeded while on parole, a full-time job, then started my own business, full home, and then it was stripped from me. And I'm now living in Salinas in my car for the last 2 months.
John, thank you for being with us and sharing your story with us. Thank you. I'm going to now go to the consent calendar. Colleagues, that is items 8, 9, and 10. The Reentry Resource Center statistics, there's a slide in there that gives you a snapshot of what you can find online. Thank you for that information. I thought it was really very well done. What I would like to ask, if I could get a motion and a second for the consent calendar. And if you, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the consent calendar? Any public comment on the consent calendar?
There are currently no requests to speak.
Okay, great. I'm going to close the public comment. I'm going to ask for an aye. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously.
And just to clarify, so that's a motion by Member Nicolai and a second by
Pablo.
Pablo. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. That was for 8, 9, and 10. And colleagues, we're going to go to item 4, and this is a jail population and bookings quarterly report. And as folks come forward for that, I wanted to ask, Mike Medina in my office is managing our internship program this summer. We've done one every summer except during COVID since I've been in office. So I'd like to invite our interns to please stand, and we're going to give them a welcome. I'm so excited to have all of them. Thank you for being with us. All right, so I'm turning it over.
Well, good morning, Chairperson Chavez and members of the committee. Casey Halkin, Deputy County Executive, and I will be presenting today on the quarterly report relating to the jail population and bookings. And through the chair, I can review each slide individually. I'm happy to do that, or I can take questions if you prefer.
Go ahead and
to
do the
manage.
presentation if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. So as you will see, and we do this, the way that we present this information is we try to compare it over time, so that way the committee has a sense of how the population has changed. So as you will note towards the end of the slide to the right, the population has remained relatively stable with which we are, I think, all very pleased to see, a decreasing trend. And that decreasing trend has really started in the last couple of months. That is somewhat unusual. We see a spike in crime usually in our community in the summertime. But as you will note from this slide, we have a little bit of a decreasing trend towards what we would consider Q2 of calendar year 2024. And again, you'll notice this steep drop-off during COVID when we had shelter-in-place restrictions, and then also that slow increase, particularly as $0 bail was ended. And again, we've remained kind of hovering around that 2,900, 3,000 mark over time. So this is something that has been, I think, of particular interest here and certainly also at Public Safety and Justice Committee. And this is the population trend of those that in custody accused of either a misdemeanor or a felony, and those that are sentenced and unsentenced. Prior to probably COVID certainly, and also some of the progressive steps taken by the county, by the district attorney's office, by the sheriff's office and the public defender's office, along with the courts and pretrial services, we would have seen a much higher population in the past of misdemeanor people, of those individuals accused of misdemeanor in custody. But what you'll notice here is that we've continued with the trend of having a really high percentage of unsentenced individuals accused of committing a felony in custody. And really what that's showing us is that the jail is now being reserved for those who are accused of committing the most serious crimes. And that consistently has remained the case. You will notice that it's decreased slightly and for our felony unsentenced. And we think this may indicate that efforts to reduce the criminal court case court backlog, which we've talked about at length here and certainly at Public Safety and Justice, bless you, is working as more cases are being adjudicated. So you're seeing that felony unsentenced number decrease slightly. And again, we think this is likely related to the court case backlog. But I think that all of the partners here will agree that more work continues to be needed to be done on that front. But we are seeing that reduction. So again, this is around our bookings. So again, this is very common, and I feel a little bit like a broken record when I come, but really these numbers have remained somewhat consistent over time. So slight increase in March, but the total number of felony and misdemeanor bookings has decreased somewhat and has remained stable in the last several months. Now, this was a slide that was added at the request of Chairperson Chavez, really to break down the types of cases that we're seeing in both our felony and our misdemeanor. So this will give you an idea of, again, 48% of the booking charges coming into the jail are misdemeanors, so 52% are felony. And this is that breakdown. The largest still remains violent crime or felony against a person. And you'll notice there from the right-hand side a further breakdown. And of course, the two top charges there are assault and domestic violence. And then the second sort of greatest area is our theft and burglary. So you can take a look at that a little bit and see how this breakdown, this has also remained consistent from month to month. There's been a slight change. You'll see sometimes felony against a person goes down to 17%, sometimes up to 19%, but again, it's remained fairly consistent. So this is that same slide for our misdemeanor breakdown. And again, that misdemeanor DUI is consistently one of our higher percentage points for our misdemeanor bookings. And again, I think it's important to note for the misdemeanor violence against a person, over half is domestic violence related. So sometimes we tend to think of misdemeanors as being less serious, and most of them are. But for those of us, I think, who've worked in a domestic violence field, misdemeanor domestic violence is something that our county takes seriously, and that can include assaults. It can also include some violations to restraining orders, as you'll note on the further breakdown to the right. I think what's important, just briefly, for both of those comparisons, so you'll note that a previous slide had indicated when we looked at the felony and the breakdown from felony and misdemeanor, those accused of them in custody. It's less than 10% of the overall jail population. So while we have misdemeanor bookings accounting for 48% of the bookings, they are less than 10% of the jail population. They hover at around 8%. So I think that inverse number, again, which you would not have seen 5 to 7 years ago, but that inverse number really does indicate that our diversion efforts to get people out of custody more quickly, particularly on low-level charges, is working, and really jail is being reserved for those individuals where there's a safety concern or those who have been accused of more serious crimes. So again, we've tracked this over years really to better understand how people cycle through our jail system. And you will note here that the vast majority of people that come into our system are released between 0 and 1 day. So 0 and 1 day can be 8 hours, 1 hour, 3 hours, anything lower than that 24-hour mark. And so the two highest categories have always been those that are exited out of custody within 24 hours or less, or those that remain over 5 days. In general, those that are remaining over 5 days are those that are accused of more serious crimes, felony cases, or more serious misdemeanors. Some of the 2 to 3 day, that can also depend on the day that you're arrested. So if you're booked on a Friday, you may stay over the weekend until you have an arraignment the following week. So there are some changes and fluctuations that remains relatively stable, but there are some changes in that because of the day that you're booked. So again, this is a further evaluation of the release data. And so you'll note here the unsentenced jail releases. So this is really people who are released pre-trial. And so you'll note that that number has remained slightly consistent. It's gone up actually a bit. And this indicates that we are continuing to use robustly our pretrial options to release those that back into community for those that it's safe to do so. And you'll note that that is going up slightly. I think the most important breakdown here on this slide is really the average length of stay, which we refer to as the ALOS. And it's remained relatively stable. So again, it's that what we hope to be is that proof that those efforts to reduce the backlog have been effective. We're not seeing people and seeing that number continue to rise, which is a good sign. But it also suggests, because it's not going down significantly, that more efforts continue to be needed to reduce that criminal case backlog. So I know we have various representatives here on the committee from the departments, from the district attorney's office and from the public defender's office and probation and pretrial, who can probably answer more specific questions. But I do know that the departments are working together to try to make headway through some of those cases. I also want to acknowledge that Assistant District Attorney James Gibbons Shapiro is sitting behind me, and I've already told him that we can call him up if there are questions for the DA as well. So with that, that concludes my presentation, but I'm available for questions, and certainly the experts on the committee as well.
Great, thank you. I'm going to first see if there are any public comments on this item.
There are no requests to speak.
And I'm going to close the public comments, and I'm going to just see if, Nick, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, on the average length of stay on this slide here specifically, everybody's grouped together misdemeanors and felonies. Is it broken out, or what would it look like? Average length of stay for felonies, average length of stay for misdemeanors. It would
I
be
think that's a
interesting.
great point. So we can, one of the things that I think has been helpful about this presentation is we continue to refine our data collection. I think when we started off, it was 3 slides, and now we're up to 9. So that is certainly something I can come back to the committee with a further breakdown of that ALOS for felony and misdemeanor. Absolutely.
That was exactly my question. Any other comments or questions on this side? Any comments or questions? Pablo? Yeah, the lights, I think, let me just. There you go.
Really quickly, I wanted to ask Mr. Fisk, I see the increase as projected kind of continues to rise and as far as individuals that are coming on for pretrial services. How has your staff increased or your support in that area? Has it increased to match that growth?
Well, staff has been resilient, and they're striving to keep up with the work. One of the things that's positive that we're seeing is the ORs are increasing. Also, diversion went from 100 cases to about close to 500 cases. So our growth is not really in the more labor-intensive areas.
Okay, copy that. Another comment I just wanted, and you made mention of the data and the collection. What I'm wondering is, are we able yet to cross-reference by let's say individual comes in and we have the charges that they're there for, misdemeanors as you listed and felonies. Are we able to cross-reference that with the services they are receiving? For example, we're still not able to kind of make those two meet?
No, so the system that we utilize to gather this data is CGIC, which is a very antiquated system. It's a system that Supervisor Chavez is very aware of, and yes, and we are working to have a replacement for. But that system really tracks cases and individuals as they move through the criminal legal process, not necessarily the supportive services process. Right. We could certainly, and have in the past, done more kind of like a slice of cases where we've pulled like 100 cases and really done deep dives over different questions. Right. But unfortunately, the data that each office has, they collect separately. So it's a little bit challenging. But I think that what we can do is if there's a particular interest from the committee on certain types of individuals, certain types of charges, right, attempt to do more of a deep dive about what are those typical services or the typical case profile as it moves through the system. Right. But it would be pretty, it would be more of a summary than individual just because the nature of the system, it's time intensive to look at every case.
Okay. I mean, I would love to be able to take a look at I know somebody has to be able to have access to all of those. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to take a look at the cases that are coming in. Let's say assaults for felonies are at the highest point. Mm-hmm. If those assaults, if they're related to substance abuse, and then so what substance abuse? Because you see when a person comes into jail, there's the fentanyl, for example.
Sure.
Recently attached to some other work that we're talking about, but to be able to cross-reference that to not only give people the resources that they need, but to set the system up appropriately to be able to handle that as we see it coming, like forecasting in that sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you make a really good point. And, that work is happening. I don't know that it's happening in this kind of graph presented way, but like I'm looking over at my colleague, Brandon Cabrera, the district attorney's office and the work that they're doing with public defender. I know Megan Piano is sitting right behind me, and around clients coming through with mental health diagnosis, clients coming through with substance use. And so there is a lot of coordinated work about how people are coming into the system and why. What are the services that they're typically getting? And I know they're working with Sherry and Gabby and others to better understand what services are working and need to be augmented. I see Brandon sitting up. I don't know if you wanted to say any comments on that.
No, just briefly. It is an area that we are beginning to look into of when someone's brought into custody, how quickly can we identify the needs that they might need, right? Mm-hmm. So We are trying to create pilot programs to address, is it mental health? If so, can we grab that individual and identify it and provide services earlier than we ever had before in the county? It is a working project with the Public Defender's Office that we're working on, so it's an interesting question you brought up, but it's something we're looking into. Do we have data and graphs yet? No. But we are pinpointing those issues and really trying to identify those issues as early as possible in the process than we ever have before.
Right. I mean, the data in the aggregate, because we're collecting it, right? We obviously, when I was still working, we did the like an 18-month blind study with perceptual feedback through that point. There was really key indicators that could kind of predict a person's success or unsuccessful completion of programs. So I'm just thinking, looking at in that sense, we have all those tools there. It's just being able to. There's a way to take that data and kind of filter it in through and see if X, Y, and Z are meeting. Then it usually results in A, B, and C. You know, so those are points of engagement that we could use. I know you guys are on it, but I just wanted to make sure that
I think it's a
brought
great
it up.
point you bring up, Pablo. Thank you. And I'm also thinking about our reentry colleagues sitting behind me and Javier and Charmaine, you know, who are working with people, to our very eloquent public speaker who was talking about this earlier. We have a really rich source of information in the people that we're serving to give us feedback about what's working and what's not. And I know Supervisor Chavez has brought this up a number of times, but we are a learning organization. We want to be a learning organization. And so taking into that feedback from people like you and also from our speakers and those who are going through the system, I think is critical to informing how the system is designed, because it's really important that it's designed to work for the people we need it to.
Right.
Thank
Well,
you, Pablo.
I don't want to take all your time. Just the last thing I wanted to say is, as you're collecting, it's useful to figure out a mechanism in which people that are unsuccessful, there's usually the loudest voice. If we figure out a way to kind of gather that information, even as they're exiting the door, that information is so rich. So whether it can be incentivized or figuring out a way other than at police engagement or reincarceration, that we gather that information, because I think that's where the richest stuff, you know, goes. So.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pablo. Any other comment? Oh, Bob.
Yeah,
Sure.
I just wanted to kind of put an exclamation point on the access to programs and the comments made by Mr. Johnson in his time into the state system, as far as not having or being fully prepared for reintegration. And one of the things that may be of value for this group is to hear from our rehabilitation director, Holly Childs, and the work she's been doing over the past year in making sure that the clients have the programs that are best suited for their needs at the particular time, so they're prepared for reentry. She's been doing some phenomenal work. I think we're scheduled to have a presentation in front of Public Safety Justice. I think it's this month, not 100% sure, and I'm not sure if we've ever put her on the agenda for this group, but I think it'd be really valuable for this group to hear some of the work that's being done and some of the suggestions that she has in moving forward. So.
Well, we'll work with Javier's office to make sure we agendize her. I think that's a good point. Not seeing any other comments, I wanted to just highlight 3 different issues. One is that, first of all, I wanted to say thank you before I raise any issues, because I recognize that we're pushing to get deeper into the data and better be able to use that data to make decisions. It is clear to me that while the county is looking at building a new jail, which we need, that we should not do that absent understanding the programs and services and, frankly, who is staying the longest, because that will drive programs, including the state making us responsible for people who are not competent to stand trial. Yes. And so one body of work that I know we've talked around the edges, but we haven't really just dug in, is that I don't think we should design or construct a jail without understanding who we're serving in it. Like, I think that would be really, it's what everybody does. They just build a big box and then we all complain about the box. So from my perspective, the issue around data that's going to become really important is the question that Nick asked about who's staying shorter, who's staying longer. And I also think taking a look at the cases that are coming in, because we know, and I know that from, I'm sure our public safety leaders here that are, running police departments and the sheriff's department will tell us the number of calls and responses they have, particularly around domestic violence, as an example. And so how are we responding to that? How is the structure of the facility? And then how is the structure designed so that it has the programming it needs? And I think this also speaks to a point that Pablo raised around mental health, behavioral health, drug and alcohol, and then the throughput of human beings through that facility, and then what's the step-down facility? Because the other thing I think we have to be mindful of is, in my mind, it's old-fashioned to think about the box without understanding that almost everybody who comes in comes out.
Yes.
And then what's the way that we want that to happen? So as it relates to the analysis, I think those length of stays are really critical, and then the services that are being required by folks based on length of stay, which includes the mental health and services they're getting for physical health as well. The second thing that I wanted to just acknowledge is that CJIC is so painful, and I don't know where we are in the process of updating the database, and I feel like we've heard this at Public Safety and Justice. Do you know the answer to that question?
I do, roughly,
20,
but
50?
I know somebody who does.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are continuing meetings happening with TSS and Amin in particular, and Nina, but the DA's office is our CJIC administrator, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Gibbon-Shapiro.
Hi, everyone. I'm James Gibbon-Shapiro from the DA's office, and I serve on tons of committees that talk about CJIC. But the portions of CJIC that need to be replaced are a couple different ones. One of them has to do with jail management, and that is about a third of the functionality of CJIC. The new jail management system, and Sheriff Johnson and his team might be able to speak more about this, is set to launch in September of 2025. When the new jail management system launches in September of 2025, that'll replace about a third of CJIC functionality. Other things that CJIC does are things related to how law enforcement agencies communicate with each other and with the courts. And a lot of that functionality needs to be rewritten, new programs written, rather than buying a product off the shelf like the new jail management system. So that is also underway, and the goal of the TSS team, they tell me, is to try to have that launch coincide with the launch of the new jail management system, or at least as close as possible, so that CJIC replacement can start in September of 2025, and then those other replacements take place in the months that follow. Now, I'll also say that those who follow this story have heard this story before. It was the case that the first target date for CJIC replacement was June of 2020, and we are now in August of 2024, and CJIC has not been replaced. So we'll just say that I acknowledge that we've been down this road before.
It's a very Lucy, Charlie Brown feeling that I have right now. You know, the football's about to be moved. But let me just say, James, thank you for playing a leadership role in it. I know this is really one of the most painful things that we've dealt with. And just to add a bit of information is that when the county purchased Epic, and that's our medical database that we use for our health and hospital system, we bought it for the hospitals and we didn't put it in the jails right away, so we just did that in the last few years. And I raise that because that's also another huge source of data that we need to figure out how to integrate and then follow HIPAA doing it. So this is not an easy quest that we have to combine all that data, but I will say that I just want to reinforce this point, which is that we really shouldn't build anything until we know who we're building for. We wouldn't do that for any other building that we build, and so I'm just going to really lean in on that and say thank you. The last point I wanted to raise is that I do think what Nick asked for in terms of length of stay made me think about one other point, which is that when we share this data and we're looking at how we're being effective both in diversion, you know, one of the other issues that I just want to emphasize is that I also think we have to figure out a way to, and I think you're starting to do this, which is to analyze the implications every time reports come to us, which I see you all did really dug in, and I appreciate that. And the reason is that the question people are going to ask us is, are we a safer community? Period. And safety means a lot of things to folks, but ultimately, any changes we make have to result in the community's increased safety and security. And there's a lot of components to that. I don't want to say it's one or the other, but we should be thinking about that as we look at data, because at some point, we're going to need to have a bigger discussion about what that means and how the policies and procedures that we're exercising line up with that community desire. So, well, thank you. I thought this was very well done, and I appreciate you letting us take so much time on it. Colleagues, is it okay if we move to the next item? Because there's no action to be taken here except some recommendations on analysis. And I think the length of stay is probably the most important. Yeah, perfect. Thank you both. I'm now going to move to item 5, and this is to receive an annual report from the Office of Diversion and Reentry Services relating to their participation in Government Alliance on Race and Equity, known as GARE, and the Reentry Equity Action Plan. Welcome.
Good morning, members of the Reentry Network Governance. Javier Aguirre, Director of Office of Diversion and Reentry Services. And before we start, I'd like to also introduce our student fellow, Taylor Powell.
Oh, welcome.
She's our
Yay.
10th Stanford Fellow, so this is our 10th year hosting a summer fellow in our office. And she's currently working with our office, with Dr. Child's office, to administer a survey that we'll be doing in custody. And I was just looking at the survey, and the questions that Pablo came up or asking are some of the questions that we're hoping to ask the individuals in custody. What's working, what's not working, and what can we do better, part of their reentry in their journey. So perfect timing.
Great, thank you.
So today I'd like to, really excited about bringing an update to this committee on our efforts on equity, our equity efforts as we have been providing an update to this committee over the last few years. As you recall, back in 2020, we convened a REAL team, Racial Equity Action Leadership Team, with members of the Reentry Resource Center, staff, and community members, and our CBOs. And that created our Reentry Racial Equity Action Plan. So with me today, we have some great presenters and great colleagues moving this effort along. We have Juan Guevara. He's our program manager for the Office of Diversion and Reentry Services. So not only does he manage the South County Reentry Resource Center, but also is taking the lead in implementing our Racial Equity Action Plan. And then to his right is Charmaine Moran, our program manager 3. She oversees both the reentry centers here in San Jose and in Gilroy, and then also provides guidance in terms of the Racial Equity Action Plan. And then on her right is James Gibson Shapiro, our Assistant District Attorney, who will be presenting on the District Attorney's efforts in data collection that we are learning to see how we will then move forward with our justice system dashboard. So next slide. So part of our efforts is really working with our Office of Diversion, Equity, and Belonging, ODEB, in terms of our partnership with GARE. So it's been a very long journey, but very educational journey in learning all the efforts that other counties are doing and how we could implement some of those racial equity efforts. And so in January of this year, we were selected to join ODEB's Racial Equity Training Committee. And it's a group of individuals that we support and provide information with all of our other department colleagues implementing these racial equity efforts. And then the next slide is our strategies for advancing racial equity. So the four strategies are creating awareness and understanding, improving access services from a racial equity lens, partner with communities, community collaboration, and justice system dashboard prototype development, and that's going to be our focus for this meeting today. So on that, I'm going to turn it over to Juan.
Good morning, Supervisor Chavez and REN members. Again, my name is Juan Guevara. I'm a program manager with the Office of Diversion and Reentry Services. In our commitment to raise awareness and understanding of racial equity, DRS has prioritized having staff attend a full day of intensive racial equity training. And thanks to ODEB's Governing for Racial Equity training sessions, over 90% of our staff have been able to participate. Once those sessions resume, we intend to continue going to these trainings and achieving 100% participation in our office. As part of our, one of our initiatives is our unscripted podcast series. And on April 23rd, we released a video, a clip about our focusing on the unique challenges faced by women of color. And in that clip, we really highlighted the roles of mothers and the emotional toll of providing support to their families while going through the criminal justice system. On April 6th, DRS was invited by the city of Gilroy to a community listening session where we heard and informed community members about the unique struggles of our clients, which are predominantly Black and Latino. On June 4th, we hosted a screening of Honor Thy Mother, which featured Aboriginal women from Canada and Native women from tribes in Alaska and Washington. This event helped raise awareness and facilitate dialogue amongst staff, service providers, clients, and community members about systemic racism. And so it was a nice event. And if you look at the slide, we have a picture of the attendees and the room in our at our center. Go ahead. Regarding improving access, with the support of supervisors, we were able to onboard full-time staff to our South County Reentry Center, allowing the center to be open Monday through Friday. This really enhances our level of access to community members in Santa Clara County. With that expansion, we were able to also extend the employment support classified program. So that allowed South County job seekers access to it and removed some of those transportation barriers. DRS has also continued their partnership with ESO Ventures, providing entrepreneurial opportunities to Black and Latino community members. In that partnership and 4 outreach events, we've been able to, it resulted in over 50 clients participating in the intake and orientation. Of those clients that participated, 33 completed the entire curriculum. And those sessions included over 60 coaching sessions and also 8 guest note speakers that discussed several topics on business and giving them that insight and tools. In regards to partnering with communities, go ahead. We're continuing to partner with ODEB on a monthly basis. We meet we meet monthly, and in order to support reentry and the countywide racial equity efforts. DRS also participated in highlighting the county's racial equity efforts with GARE, and the collaboration resulted in a video that will be used to promote racial equity work throughout the nation. And last but not least, DRS has also partnered with local police departments to administer case conferencing and to identify members who have high contacts with law enforcement. The goal is to target resources and support to these community members in order to limit the likelihood of encountering the criminal justice system. And so that's some of our initiatives. And I'm going to hand it back to Charmaine to discuss the dashboard component.
Thank you, Juan. Good morning, Supervisor Chavez, members of the committee. This is an update on the progress of the Justice System Dashboard Work Group. Since the last report out, beginning August 2023, the Justice System Dashboard Work Group developed a comprehensive work plan to guide our work and to define key milestones, focusing really on two elements: process improvement and consensus building. Our work group agreed to a two-phased approach, with the first phase involving developing, testing, and refining a prototype that would be launched internally. The timeline and key milestones for this first phase are highlighted in the slide you see here, with an expected launch date of December 2024. Phase 2 will focus on using data and lessons learned from the prototype to launch a public-facing dashboard. We expect that process to begin early FY26. A few highlights of our accomplishment that I'd like to touch on are that this work group developed a comprehensive work plan, and it has led to a draft internal prototype that's really based on consensus. And we focus and spend a lot of time in our work group building trust and building consensus so that we can get to this point. We also defined common data indicators that would be included in the dashboard, which we all agreed to as well. And we worked on defining and really developing data limitation cards and explanations so that as we launch the dashboard, members of the public, internal committee members, stakeholders will understand the limitations of the data in a way that's understandable. We recognize that an internal prototype is just the first step in moving towards creating a comprehensive justice system dashboard for the public. Our committee also recognizes that there's limitations to this internal prototype, but that we're committed to developing a public-facing dashboard that really does illustrate the racial and gender and other inequities that exist in our system. And with that, I'll pass it to James, who's going to highlight some of the district attorney's work.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me again on this item. If you could go to the next slide, please. So in April of this year, we did a soft launch, and last month we did a full public-facing launch of the district attorney's dashboards. And if you go on the district attorney's website, you'll be able to click on links to show all of those dashboards, and then there's the link also in this presentation for those of you who want to do that. The dashboards were developed in conjunction with a group called Prosecutor Performance Indicators. This is a nonprofit that is an offshoot of the Vera Institute, and they suggest to DA's offices around the country different ways that they think the prosecutors' offices should measure themselves, both for performance internally, and also to report to the public about the transparency of the work at the DA's office. And a lot of those indicators are about race, and I'm going to highlight some of those here. And some of them do not have to do with race, but also deal directly with some of the work on this committee, and the last slide I'll show has to do with that. For the slides, for those of you who go on the dashboards, you'll see that some of them indicators don't directly have to do with race, but even if they don't, you're able to do a filter to actually see the racial breakdown of that data, even though the indicator itself is not focused on race. So if you could go to the next slide, I'll talk about some of these indicators. So one of the things that PPI, Prosecutor Performance Indicators, suggests that we report to the community is what is the race and ethnicity of prosecutors who work at the DA's office. So this chart, which is on our dashboard, shows the change between 2010 and the end of 2023 that show the increase in racial diversity of prosecutors in the DA's office. And then the last line is comparing that with the population, the racial breakdown of lawyers who work in the state of California. And of course, that's an important comparison because the only people who can be hired as prosecutors in the DA's office are people who are licensed to be lawyers in the state of California. I'm often asked when we present this data, what are the efforts you've used to increase diversity? And most of those efforts have to do with outreach at law schools to encourage a wide variety of people to become summer interns at the DA's office, because we know that that's a pathway to becoming hired full-time. And it's that outreach effort that really began in earnest in 2011 that has led to these results. Can you go to the next slide? Another indicator here is victims of violent crime by race. You can see a big category of there is missing because some victims of violent crime do not disclose their race when asked that question, and intake interviews with our victim services unit, although more have been doing that of late. But you can see that our victims of violent crime compared to census data, especially if you pulled out the missing data, are disproportionately Latino, they're disproportionately high African American, they're disproportionately low Asian, disproportionately low white compared to census data. Next slide, please. This slide shows the percentage of cases that we file. So when the DA's, the first important decision, and it's a very important decision that prosecutors make, is we receive reports of crime from police agencies, and then we decide to file criminal charges or not file criminal charges. So this chart is showing how those filing rates have changed over time, and there are some policy reasons why that fell in 2018, 2019 that I can go into if you are interested. But I think what's interesting about this comparison data by race is you can see that the filing rate by race is about the same for our main racial or ethnic groups in the county. So that when we receive a police report and file criminal charges, about 75% of the time we're filing criminal charges, and that number is about the same regardless of race and ethnicity. If you could go to the next slide. All right, so I said that all the indicators don't have to do with race. So this is an example of one of the indicators that doesn't have to do with race. And this is an indicator about the length of time it takes for a felony case to go from beginning to end in our court system. And you can see there was a big jump that started in 2020 as our courts were closing down, that we had reduced court capacity and a growing backlog of cases in the criminal justice system in our county. And this is directly related to the presentation that you received just before. When we talk about the average length of stay of somebody who is unsentenced for a felony in a county jail, it's directly related to the length of time it takes in court for a felony case to go from beginning to end. And so as those numbers increase, the average length of stay for people charged with felonies in the county jail also increased. We've seen a beginning of a reduction in 2023. Our early data from 2024 shows that that is continuing to come down, but it's nowhere near what it was before the pandemic, and we have a long way to go to get there. So these dashboards that I've been presenting to you, the reason why it's part of this presentation with this group is because this data is going to be the backbone of the data that we, the DA's office, contribute to the broader justice system dashboard project. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are you complete, Javier?
Do we have the next steps? Yep, just a final slide on our next step. So I think we might have missed it, but it's in your packet. But in the next steps, it just identify what our goals are in terms of moving forward with our equity action plan. And one of the items is also working closely with ODEB to use equity principles and best practices in developing and conducting outreach for our upcoming reentry service request for proposal. So that's a $6 million RFP that we're hoping to release later this year. All of our service navigation, legal services, life skills, that's our hope, is that we would use some equity principles and equity practices in that effort. So with that, we are available for questions.
Great, Javier. Do we have any public speakers?
We do have one speaker, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so our speaker is Benzie. Benzie, we are unmuting you. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will begin when you begin speaking.
Yes. If we want everyone to have faith that our criminal justice system is fair, we really need to address abusism. I didn't see anyone present any data on abuses in the legal system. I mentioned in my opening statement, in the public comment, that my kids are being sexually abused and the criminal justice system is being used to conceal that sexual abuse. And like I said, charges were filed against me and I didn't even commit a crime, and I presented that evidence to the district attorney's office and they didn't care. They let the proceedings continue because a highly connected judge is involved and my former attorney is involved. And throughout this process, I've been physically assaulted. And I've suffered great bodily injury because of this. I mean, all my organs are damaged, my testicles have atrophied, the shape of my face has changed, I've lost sensation across my entire body. This has been confirmed, the poisonings have been confirmed by ER doctors, and I presented that to the district attorney's office. They didn't care. I mean, I got pictures posted online what happened to my face. They completely decimated my face. If you Google Valerie Houghton poison, you'll see, I mean, the drastic effect that the poison has had on me. And nobody cares. I mean, who can trust the justice system when physical assaults are being allowed during a criminal proceeding to pressure the defendant to take certain actions? I mean, that's just unheard of, and it's crazy, and it shouldn't be going on in this county, and unfortunately it is. And there's lots of people here who know about it, and they won't put a stop to it. And it's just, I mean, how can you have faith in that? And we need to.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public comment period. I'm going to see if there are any comments. Yeah, Pat or Chief?
Just
Sorry.
a question for the DA's office. I know we've been discussing the new race-blind format that we're going to have to use starting, I believe it's January 1st. Will that just be added to the dashboard? Because I think that's obviously going to make a potentially big difference.
Yeah, it's unclear what the difference. So I'll just back up a little bit. So California passed a law that goes into effect in January, requiring all DA's offices, when they're making decisions about whether to file criminal charges or not, to redact from the police reports they're reviewing the racial identifying information of everyone involved in the case. So from the suspect to the victim to witnesses, police officers, including not just checkboxes, but also names and other information. So our DA's office has entered an agreement with Harvard's Computational Policy Lab. They are providing us software in exchange for us being a guinea pig for them in a study about the new law that will automatically redact from police reports the racial information so that we can make a race-blind charging decision. And then once that decision is made, then and then the case will just proceed, and the unredacted report is used for all other purposes after that point. So, Chief Nikolai, your question is, how might that affect some of the data that we've been talking about? I'll just say we don't know. One of the things that we do know is that right now, our charging decisions are about the same for the 4 main racial or ethnic groups in the county at about 75%. So, in a lot of ways, we don't have a lot of room for improvement going to race blind. And one of the worries about the new law is that, and this has been shown by some of the agencies that implemented it as a pilot phase earlier, is that using race blind issuing increased racial disparities in the filing of criminal cases. So we hope that that's not the case. And part of the reason why we've got an agreement with Harvard is to study the results in our county of using race blind issuing.
Go ahead.
James, just a quick question, which is in talking about equity work and certainly race and ethnicity information, obviously the sourcing is always really important. I suspect I've had this conversation with you before, but my question is, to what extent are you able to, with confidence, rely that the data you're reporting is self-reported versus what potentially appears in a police report? Is there discussions with the law enforcement agencies about best practices of requiring self-reporting? And I noticed that you have the victim information, which I assume is taken out of self-reporting from your victim witness unit.
Yeah, I'll start with that last part. So you're absolutely right that the victim information for victims of violent crime is self-reported by victims who are working with our victim services unit. And those intake interviews, sometimes victims decline to state, and you have that's why you have a large but decreasing number of missing data on victims of violent crime data. For information about people charged with crimes, we get that information primarily from booking data at the jail that we get imported into our case management system from CJIC. So our case management system pulls booking information from CJIC into it. And so a lot of that information about suspects of crime and people who are charged defendants in criminal cases is pulled from that booking data from the jail. And where the booking data, if the person hasn't been booked in the jail because it's from a citation, it comes from the information that's on the citation. So you're right, Damon, we're relying on what's happening either at the time of booking in the jail or in the field when a citation is written as the basis for that data. It's not, I'll say a part of that booking data we know is a little bit more complicated. I'll just talk about the Asian Pacific Islander group. So when the jail does bookings for people, they actually don't lump together Asian Pacific Islander. They have about 10 different categories that we are lumping together for the purposes of this kind of study for Asian Pacific Islander. So I think the jail is relying on self-reporting, especially for Asian Pacific Islander, to find out if someone is Chinese American, Japanese American, or some other subgroup, and they have a lot of different subgroups for that.
Any other comments or questions on Pablo?
Just really quickly, I'm just wondering how I didn't see a slide for the racial breakdown across people that are getting arrested. So, I mean, we're going into a blind study, right? We remove the factors, but the statistics still tell you exactly, like the disparities are going to be there regardless. So that's going to make the blindness of the trial that you guys are doing kind of not blind at all. You know, when we're looking at the amount of individuals that are arrested, you know, Hispanics, African Americans, the disparity is there. So whether not to address it in this sense, but you're gonna have to isolate that in some capacity, you know, so to figure it out. I mean, that's just being real. The other part of that is when we're looking at the change in, like the diversity within leadership, within staffing in the district attorney's office. From what I understand, and I've always known, is that the district attorney's is one of the strongest offices in our judicial system. You guys get to determine what gets charged. So if it's a capital crime, a felony, or whatever, that falls at your guys' discretion. So when we're looking at increasing the balance between the peers that are, you know, the Latinos, African Americans, and whatnot, to kind of balance it out, that's a good effort, but the culture has to change as well. You know, in order for that real dramatic change for diversity to go from a word into something that people that's tangible, we have to start looking at the culture that we have. The Santa Clara County for years has been a space where, from you know, and I was a consumer of that and a believer of that, was that this county was a place where they'd come after you. Crimes you committed them, they come after you, you're going to prison. You know, so if that's the same concept, the same mindset, and we're looking at the blind factors and everything staying the same, then if we're going to be doing the effort to become inclusive, diverse, and whatnot, then take a look at the training and the practices that we have within the office. I mean, this is an ideal time, not to be on a soapbox, but we stand on the cusp of diversity is not just a word. There's things in the culture today that are no longer allowed that were just 5 years ago, that were commonplace. You know, so I would challenge your office to take a look at that and really be bold in the steps that you take, rather than not saying that you do, but be bold in the steps that you take to increase dramatic and lasting change.
I'm so glad you asked this question, and we really welcome this topic and this conversation. So first of all, you're 100% right that the people who are arrested or cited for crimes in Santa Clara County, like in all of California, like in all of the United States, does not match the population, the census data population. So in our county, it's true both for people who are arrested and then who are later charged with a crime by the DA's office, that about 50% of the people who are charged with crimes in our county are Latino, even though the Latino population is about 30% in our county. It's true that about 10% of the people who are charged with crimes in our county are African American, even though the African American population in our county is around 3%. About 25% of the people who are charged with crimes in our county are white, and that is lower than, although a little bit less lower. It's the least racially disparate number. Another big racially disparate number is our Asian Pacific Islander number. About 10% of the people charged with crimes in Santa Clara County are Asian or Pacific Islander, even though the census population for Asian Pacific Islander is more than 30%. So there's lots of factors that have to do with that. And actually, we talk about this, and you can also toggle data on this on the dashboards that we've presented. And then also we talk about that we have very lengthy race and prosecutions reports that you can find on our website that we release periodically. But it confirms exactly what you're saying. The other thing I'll say about this is, and this is for the last part about challenging the DA's office to be bold in its thinking about that, we have made some policy decisions in the last few years that while they have not changed the breakdown of the pie, meaning that the numbers are about the same, the pie has shrunk dramatically. And when you have disproportionality in a system and you're shrinking the pie, the effects of shrinking the pie are disproportionately felt in the Latino and African American community. And what I mean by that is we have, in the last few years, really changed our policies on diversion and on the way we approach low-level drug crimes so that we've reduced the number of filings in criminal court by about 40%, mostly because of the use of pre-filing diversion in low-level misdemeanors and in drug crimes. And while if you look at the pie chart, it still shows that 50% of the people we charge are Latino. Because the pie has shrunk, that has an outsized effect on the Latino and African American populations.
Again, when we were talking about, and we could go all day, I'm just saying.
I know we could.
When we're looking at the work that Reentry is doing by throwing services at individuals that were prone for recidivism, so attacking those key things. They're showing success there. I see the number dropping. I'd like to see, some coordination, some collaboration where the resources and the way that we're approaching the situation, if we're going from 90% to 75%, which is shrinking that pie, at the same time where the increase in other pies should be growing, coming from the district attorneys. We talk about no entry, re-entry all the time. That's a hope. But that starts with you guys, with the district attorney's office, and instead of choosing to file and saying, okay, you're getting the break and we're not going to file, but that's all we're really doing is setting that up for something further down the road. If we're saying we're not going to file, but we're going to throw resources at you so that you don't what recidivation would be, then I think we'd have better success.
And I'll just step in to say I think that, I mean, you're correct, and it goes back to the issue that we were talking about relative to how we're tracking the investments we're making so that we do a better job of understanding dosage and all of that, and where we're going to have success and where we're not. One other point I just wanted to raise is that this issue around the API number is really critical, and I'm going to just use an example that during COVID, we were using very broad numbers to report who was getting sick, and among the Asian community, we were using API for a pretty long time, and we really pressed the staff to start breaking that number down, which is why I'm so appreciative that that's actually happening in the jails now, because both that, and I'll just say the other thing I really want us to keep focusing on is census tracts and not zip codes when we're looking at impacts, because those numbers, they're so broad that they really do not help us focus our resources at all, especially in that community. So I really appreciate, James, you raising that, because it's something that I think from a reporting perspective, we need to dramatically restructure the way we're reporting on a number of issues. I do just want to add one thing that, as we're thinking about racial equity, one of the things I was sort of struck by with the Hate Crimes Task Force is that we started that task force in response to the Gilroy shootings. And there was a lot of emphasis from a lot of parts of that committee and this was something we established so that we would be able to start putting resources into the community in a more robust way to create more opportunities to invest really in prevention in terms of these kinds of hate crimes. And I'll say we're still kind of waiting on staff for that, so hey, Casey, I'm just going to ping you to say that, I'd like to get an update from the manager's office on where we are in the investment strategy responding to the hate crimes task force. But one of the things I was most struck by is that that when we think about hate and when we think about how we're assessing the impacts in our community, that one of the things that we sort of, I don't think fully appreciated is the number of people who become victims of crime who are disabled, and how we, so that was one box, and then the other was how we think about gender. And I say that because as Gare is getting deep into racial equity, I think it will be difficult for us to ignore income and gender and sexual orientation and disability, the things that we know impact our systems and how we treat people. I have really appreciated, and just wanted to say, Javier, to you and to Reentry, that, and to all of you, that the deep dive that each of your offices and the roles you're playing are taking into this subject, because it's really touchy, and it's hard to have these conversations in an intellectually honest way without people's emotions getting inflamed. And yet, these are the exact conversations we need to have. And I also just wanted to acknowledge that one of the things I so appreciate about the work that you're doing is that, for all of you, is that we're putting numbers on paper, we're saying out loud what we know and don't know, and trying to work to a conclusion. And the reason I'm raising that is that culturally in this institution, and I say this was a little bit of the conversation I was having as we were starting this meeting, is that we need to be in an environment where we are not afraid to say, we made a mistake, we're not doing it right, we still have to figure it out. And the better government gets at doing that, the more trust it's going to build with all of our communities. And I actually think it's going to make a working environment much more intellectually honest with our nonprofit partners and internally in our organization. So thank you for the work. Thank you for leaning into continuous improvement. I think I just want to encourage us to keep saying out loud what we're working to get done, because I think it's just a really good way to build culture. So with that, I'm going to move us on. We have 2 more items, colleagues, so hang in with me. We're going to go to item 6, and this is to receive a report from the Office of the Public Defender, the Office of the Sheriff, and the Office of the County Exec relating to using video arraignments in criminal cases. And my notes say, with that many people, we have a 5-minute presentation. I'm a little bit doubtful of that, so that's a lot of folks. Oh, welcome.
Chair, I can briefly begin by introducing Megan Piano, who is our supervisor of the Public Defender's PAR team, and Charlie Hendrickson, who is the assistant, who is administratively associated with the team, and obviously Casey's joining them as well.
Great, welcome. No problem. It always takes a minute for the gremlins to let you get your program uploaded.
Thank you for bearing with me, everyone. We are excited to talk to you this morning about video arraignments in criminal cases, and we promise we will keep it short and sweet.
Thank you.
One of the things that we are really happy about is the way that we collaborate with the Sheriff's Office. They have worked with us really closely in setting up the program, and on a daily basis, we interact with several deputies throughout the day, and we work really well together to streamline the process and have it be efficient for everyone. We work together also to identify clients that are going to participate in the video arraignment process. The way that we prefer to have video arraignment clients appear in court through the system is by conducting a PAR interview the day before. This way we can have a robust discussion about the case, advise about constitutional rights, and offer the client the option of video arraignment. Appearing in arraignments is constitutionally protected, physically appearing. So we always want to make sure that we explain that to the client, and the client has the opportunity to accept or deny that offer. If they decide not to participate in video arraignments, then the Sheriff's Office will physically transport them to the courtroom where the arraignment will occur. The Sheriff's Office also identifies potential candidates for video arraignment based on booking lists they receive the morning of the day the arraignment will occur. Basically, at 8:30 a.m., they send us a list of probably 5 to 10 candidates they believe are eligible for video arraignment, and then our attorney will run those candidates and write back yes or no. This person is appropriate or this person is not appropriate. The courtroom experience, we try to parallel the courtroom experience as much as possible. Attorneys meet with the client beforehand by speaking with them on a telephone. They are in a confidential cell and we are on the other end. We do this during the lunch hour, and we appreciate that the Sheriff's Office has made this time available to us because previously we hadn't had that. The client enters the court through the video arraignment system, and they can see the judge, the district attorney, and if during the proceeding the client has additional questions or concerns, we will pass the matter, have the client go back to the confidential space, have a quick consultation, and then go back onto the record. Following the court date, the clerk can, or the court appearance, the court clerk will scan and send over important court documents, and the sheriffs will print them out and provide them to the clients right then and there. Obviously, our ability to communicate with our non-English speaking clients is essential. We see that in the courtrooms in person, but we also see that in video arraignment arena. We currently use a county contractor to provide translation services. So when we're doing that lunchtime consultation over the telephone, we call in with the county contracted service, and they can provide interpretation for any language that we require. Obviously, for the video arraignment process, in-person simultaneous interpretation is the gold standard. We would prefer that, but we are using the resources that we currently have. When interpretation is not simultaneous, it makes both the pre-arraignment consultation take twice as long and the in-court appearance takes twice as long.
Just briefly, we are working, administration is working with the Sheriff's Office and with the courts to enhance some of the equipment, to make it more available, to turn more meeting rooms into virtual spaces so that we can have virtual build-out space. Because this has been very popular with our clients and also with our colleagues, but because we also want to make some additional virtual meeting space available for things even outside of arraignment. So really trying to build up that technology both at the main jail and also at Elmwood. So the last update that I had from the courts is that they're working with the Sheriff's Office. There's some technology needs that need to go into the buildings first, and then we believe that the rollout of the updated equipment should happen in the fall.
Thank you. We're open to any questions that you might have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. First, we'll see if there's any public comment on the item.
We do not have requests to speak.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public comment. Yeah. Chief? Other chief? Yeah, there you go.
Could this be used for arrestees who are in the hospital? For instance, someone who's arrested, a warrantless arrest, which requires an arraignment, but they're not physically able to make it into a courtroom. Is that's been a challenge for us. Is this equipment mobile? Would we be able to do an arraignment, assuming that the arrestee is, capable of understanding the proceedings?
In some sense, yes, because they could call in just like the general public can go onto the Santa Clara County Superior Court website, click a link, and they're in the courtroom. The concern I would have would be about the attorney consulting the individual, how that would occur, and how we would know that that person was mentally in a state where they could really interact with us and we know that they understand. Our team is stretched very thin, and so I think in a unique situation we could try to make that work. But I do see that from the public defender side, where in court we're continuing somebody's arraignment weeks or months depending on how ill they are. So it's an interesting point.
Chief Joseph, I believe that County Council would like to weigh in as well.
I would just add briefly that any use of video technology in a hospital setting also needs to comply with HIPAA, so it'd just be an additional consideration there for whether it's the county hospital or other hospital to look into.
Thank you.
If I could, I would just like to ask staff to take a look at that, because I do understand there's, especially, let me just say this, I know that we're trying to look at every place in the system that we can do a better job of shortening time. And I also think even for the patient, the stress of that, like hanging over your head, if that's something you could get resolved, would be probably very significant. I also understand that there's some issues relative to when we take custody versus the PDs, and that adds a lot of strain and stress in terms of who's responsible for whom under what circumstance. So if I could ask for a report back to this committee actually, when it's someone else's job, I would say, maybe in the next 6 months, and confer with our police partners to just better understand what that need is, and then bring that discussion back. It's an interesting question. And I think your point about HIPAA is a really, really valuable one as well. Any other questions or comments on this, Pablo?
A couple of things. The first thing is, I was thinking as you were saying that's a great engagement point for digital inclusion. If you're going to be going that route, because there's a lot of folks that don't understand just the basic use. The city recently, a couple of years ago, they came out with the whole digital inclusion grants and whatnot. That's another point in which, before we're going to, if we have the equipment there already, just taking a look at the education that goes with it. The second part is I wanted to caution the chief, the officer over there. He mentioned about not being able to come to court. It brought to my mind individuals that are detoxing. There's again, fentanyl is a huge thing. I know that individuals are when you first get arrested, you're going through a detox process that just to travel alone, going to, I haven't been in jail for a while, but I've heard of individuals that have a very difficult time getting to the courthouse. So the process is changing, custody process is changing. So as to be mindful that for the sake of argument, that this isn't used as a means of not letting somebody who's supposed to go to court because they're detoxing. Like, that's another point of engagement. Like, we're talking about digital inclusion, another gap or an area, indicator that we need help there. If there's just so that when we're looking at the use of this, that we're looking at it, the slippery slope. If we start saying, okay, yeah, well, if a person can't make it, it may not be a hospital setting, but it could still be a health issue.
So I agree. The fentanyl epidemic is worse than we've ever seen, and daily we see individuals who are incredibly sick detoxing. But we really try to spend time with this population because we have public defender par attorneys looking at the booking list each morning. We try to speak to as many people as we can. And when we find out someone's detoxing, we will either put them on the next day if we feel like they can't interact with us, or ask them if they want to do video arraignment. Because once you explain to a client that you don't have to go in the bus early in the morning, sit in the holding cells down below the court, wait till you get called up, then go back down and stay there all day, and have, be in a box with 20, 30 people, they absolutely want the video arraignment. It's much more laid back, it's quiet, it's just much easier. But also, we have a process within our office. If someone doesn't come to court on the third time, we conduct welfare checks automatically as just an internal policy, because we care about why this person is not coming to court. But I think your points are really valid, and we can always continue to do better.
It's not just the detox part, but the arraignment part is happening around the same time a person's starting to orientate themselves. So when we come to jail, not just drug, but just trauma itself, you come to jail and you're not orientated to begin with. So, and that's around the same time that your due process, all that stuff comes up. So again, just another good opportunity to take a look and just be cautious when we move.
And I think those points also really apply to our mental health population. We really use video arraignments to make the process easier, less scary. We try to meet our clients where they are in our PAR interviews, and the video arraignment process really helps us with that.
Thank you. I have just one a question, and this is after we are doing this for some period of time, and I'm not sure what the right time is, but Casey, I would actually want you to coordinate with our public defender. I am interested in understanding the disposition of cases that are done video versus face-to-face in terms of the outcomes of the arraignments. And, there's a lot of new research being done on whether or not, how the client or the person in custody is being treated by the court. And I've actually read 2 conflicting studies on it, and I just went online last night to look again because I couldn't find I didn't bookmark them properly. So I think maybe, determine what the right amount of time is, and we should think about having an outside research partner assist us in determining the fairness of the way people are treated based on whether or not they're in person or not, because we want to make sure we're doing all we can to create that fairness. And I do think the point, Megan, I really appreciate the point you raised about the calm and the quiet and the ability to be present, because that's also something, frankly, that we should be evaluating, which is the condition of that human being in terms of the situation they're in relative to what Pablo was just talking about. So I would be very interested in understanding that. And I don't think I've not read anything definitive, because I don't think this is in our country. This has not been done long enough for that, or well researched, at least from my search. Did you want to weigh in on that?
Add briefly that. Thank you, Megan. Charlie Hendrickson. That the quality of the arraignment, whether it's in video or in person, is so greatly enhanced if Megan's team member has had the opportunity to engage the client 24 or 48 hours prior to the arraignment and have a quiet one-on-one, in-person consultation. And those people are more likely to then, after that advisement, to accept the video arraignment with Megan describing the process, or her team members of, what the day of arraignment is going to look like if they are going to have to be transported to court, as opposed to having, that kind of calm thing where they're just going to be transported within the facility to a video arraignment. So I think the PAR engagement's huge.
Right, I do understand that, and I think when we're measuring the outcome, the quality of the client attorney engagement should be included in the assessment. But the real question is, let me just say, there's a ton of research about how we interact with each other online versus how we interact face to face. versus how we interact on Zoom. And you know, online, people get all bold and use anonymous text or anonymous anonymity to make outrageous claims and to be inappropriate and all that. There's some evidence that says in Zoom or online that we are less sensitive to the other person. We're not looking at facial expressions, all of those things. And so really what I'm suggesting is that we should do an assessment ourselves of the experience we have here relative to the disposition of those cases, because if we can enhance the quality of the fairness of that, it would be really, I think, important. But I understand the point you're raising, which is that that also has to do with how the person is being prepared prior to the case. And I think we would be good test subjects. I mean, just using the example that James used earlier, to see if we can find an academic partner that would be willing to work with us on doing that assessment. Because frankly, one other thing I'd love to see us doing is not, again, I mean, reading all this other data, I think your point, Charlie, that's so well taken is the prep in all these places that were the studies that I'm looking at, I would have no idea the quality of the preparation of the client. None from any study I've read so far. So thank you for that point. All right, well done, thank you, and I appreciate the presentation. I see no other questions. We're gonna go to our last item on our agenda, and I'm gonna invite up Gabby to talk to us about CalAIM. And I just want to remind my colleagues that part of the reason this came forward is that we've gotten a lot of questions about what CalAIM allows us to do and not to do. And I was hoping that Gabby could nip any rumors in the bud so we would actually know, you know, what services are being provided and all of that. And welcome, Gabby.
Good morning. Thank you, Supervisor Chavez and Reentry Committee Network members. Again, my name's Gabby Olivares. I work for the Behavioral Health Services Department, and I'm here just to provide a brief report on behalf of Michelle Delacalle from the Office of System Integration and Transformation. Next slide, please. So this report provides an update on the behavioral health services and, again, the Office of System and Integration within Santa Clara County. We have a collaboration on a pilot that we've derived from the California Advancing Innovation Medi-Cal enhanced case management services that are focused on supporting justice-involved individuals with behavioral health conditions who are transitioning from incarceration or have been incarcerated within the last 12 months. And what you see before here is what our pilot consisted of, which is a comprehensive, whole-person, community-based, client-driven, interdisciplinary approach to care. We have outstationed a community worker within our behavioral health services teams that are co-located at the collaborative courts. They support 3 judges, Judge Yu, Judge Manley, and Judge Silva. So this community worker has been embedded to complement the services that our teams are already providing there at the courthouse. This model addresses clinical and non-clinical needs through high-touch systematic coordination of services and comprehensive care management. Again, the focus is really tightly wrapping services of people that are incarcerated or are upon release or have been released within 12 months. And that includes our behavioral health treatment services, mental health, behavioral health co-occurring, and medical housing support for that transition into community, or if people are in community and are struggling. Next slide, please. So this community worker really plays a pivotal role in the fact that they help our teams provide personalized care coordination, develop case plans that are comprehensive, and really it helps the clinician, the behavioral health clinician, to identify what other resources and services in the community are available for this individual, since we are only responsible for the behavioral health services. But through this community worker, we can avail additional medical resources for our clients. Part of that includes prior to release, housing resources are available, so this community worker will conduct a VIET-SPDAT screening, connection to emergency housing services, and other community support services as the Here Are You hotline to ensure that treatment and housing is happening simultaneously. Part of the responsibility is also to engage clients in jail, court, and the community by providing longitudinal care to build rapport and trust. So there is a lot of communication and collaboration with our behavioral health teams to ensure that medical needs are also met simultaneously with our population. We do know that this population dies 25 years younger, so medical care is an essential part of care for us now as we look at this comprehensive model that we provide. As we know, sometimes this population does not connect or engage as well, so part of that provides motivational interviewing to promote treatment readiness, adherence to medication, overcoming ambivalence, barriers, and setbacks to ensure engagement to help reduce recidivism. So part of that includes in-reach into the jail. Should we have someone that's not coming to court for whatever reason, there's anxiety, they're not taking meds, our behavioral health team and our clinician and our community worker will go inside the jail to start that in-reach and engagement and discuss what services beyond behavioral health could be availed to this individual. The community worker also specializes in meeting the needs of pregnant women with behavioral health conditions. This is one of our newest initiatives that we've recently launched. Again, we don't always know that a woman may be pregnant. She may not be connected to any kind of medical services, so we really leverage this community worker to help us with that and check the health plans to see what plans this individual can connect to upon release and start that communication early on in the jail to ensure that this individual has care if they're pregnant, and also if there's family and community that can support the individual upon release. And that information, once a release of information is signed, is given off to our treatment providers so that continuous coordination and communication can happen in community. So part of the care coordination, again, providing information to essential partners that will help this individual when they release into community, treatment, family providers, a warm handoff, and ensuring that follow-up care with behavioral health and whoever the treating physician is. Next slide, please. So just wanted to highlight some of our successes through this pilot program. Currently enrolled, or we have served 53 individuals, 45 individuals have engaged, and we've developed care plans for them, which include stable housing once the VSBDAT was conducted, connections to substance use treatment, access to support services by providing transportation, additional resources, childcare, food security. Of that, the community worker has conducted 297 interventions to maintain engagement and actively work toward better health and wellness outcomes, since we do have these clients that come back through the court to do check-ins periodically with the judges to ensure that they're staying connected to treatment, and also to the behavioral health continuum of care should they need to step up or step down in our service delivery system. Average engagement length was 193 days. Completion with that engagement includes 20 people. 2 people have graduated, and currently the caseload is 33 of this community worker. Next slide, please. And with that, concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, and just wanted to add thank you to Michelle Delacaille. We're very grateful that we were able to start this pilot that's been successful, and will continue to provide services and care to our justice-involved population, whether they're in custody or they're ready to integrate back into community. Thank you.
Gabby, thank you so much, and really for all the work you do as well. You've been just a tremendous leader on all of this work for the organization. Do we have any public speakers on this item?
We do not have requests to speak.
Okay, we're going to close the public comment. Are there any questions on this pilot program? Seeing none, oh, anybody? Okay, so seeing none, I just wanted to make one request. As you all report back at future meetings on the success. One thing I'm really interested in is understanding how many other navigators may be working with this person. And what makes me curious about that is that I'm at some point I'm going to want us to figure out how to make sure that we have fewer people communicating with the person that needs services, because I feel like sometimes we're kind of pulling on the person in different directions. And so would love to just know, are we the primary, are we the only navigator? Because at some point I'm really interested in wondering or understanding if it is possible for us to collaborate and coordinate between multiple programs, so we really do have one person assigned to helping one person instead of multiple people helping one person, which I also think is very difficult for folks to manage.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the way we've structured this model is the behavioral health clinician is the primary lead, identifies what are the presenting problems, resources, and then asks the community worker to check to see if they have already a health plan. Are they part of this managed care health plan system? Are they connected to Kaiser, whatever health plan? And the clinician kind of takes it upon themselves to describe what those other services are and really ask permission of the client if they would like to hear what other resources are available to them based on the plan and what they have. And it's really encouragement. And if they're not ready, we'll just ask the person if they just like a pamphlet or they'd like to hear services, or if they go back into custody, would they like us to send the community worker again to describe those services? I know we presented a lot of information to you today, but we want to make sure that you know that you are availed these additional resources. And it's a supportive team. We never say like this person works for, OSET. We just say this person's here to complement what we're providing you. But the behavioral health clinician really drives everything and also presents those plans in courts to the judges. And this person augments what we do. And it's a coordinated process, but the behavioral health person really takes the lead to make sure that there's that communication also to behavioral health, so they know that there's this additional connection, the name of the community workers provided, and also the community worker greets the person when they come in court. So it's a comprehensive team, and we try to just identify as one large team, but they know that the behavioral health clinician is really responsible in helping to drive their care and is here to support you. We have a supportive network to provide care and make sure that you get the tools necessary when you go into community.
I think, Gabby, what I'm referring to is that somebody who's come in and out of custody may have a community worker that's helping them with housing already, and may have somebody who's helping them with with their children from DFCS. And what I am really, again, trying to figure out is how, as we move forward, we're integrating our services enough so that I think we invest a lot of resources in every program having a person that helps that person. And just from talking to some of our clients, that's actually been one of the most interesting things to me, is they're trying to manage all the people and the resources that are helping them. So I know it depends on where people are in their journey. I recognize that. And I understand your point, which is the way you all are approaching it for this person is a much more coordinated on the behavioral health side. But there are other services that people are receiving in our own system. And so in some ways, I'm trying to better understand if somebody's got multiple people in DFCS and here and the hospital and then someone from housing, are we really able to kind of assign that person a helper instead of 4 helpers? But I understand the point you're raising in terms of the way this program is approaching it, which I really appreciate. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So I just wanted to bring up one of the big barriers that we've been experiencing, because I go into custody as well, and we get referred people by custody health. And apparently when a person is incarcerated for longer than 28 days, they suspend their Medi-Cal. So when they get released, they have Medi-Cal showing that they're incarcerated. And this creates a big barrier because we can't make referrals to treatment We can't make referrals to specialties, clinics and things like that because of their Medi-Cal status. And sometimes it can take up to 2 months to get that reinstated. So it's just a huge barrier, especially with people with severe mental health and substance abuse disorders.
Gabby, do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, actually, that's an excellent point, and I think that's where we're working so closely through the CalAIM initiative, the 90-day release planning. That definitely has been a barrier for us, for the clients. So until all of that kicks off, what we're currently doing, or what we have the ability to do, is we have what's called unsponsored funding in our programs. So we will work with the person. We ask the provider to just go ahead and take them. We start the Medi-Cal process, whether it's in custody. We have someone assigned to our office that does that. And that communication is back over to the provider to let them know this is the situation. We need to restart the Medi-Cal. The primary application has been started. We have access to what's called the state med screen, so we're able to look at, is the Medi-Cal in another county? Is it a transfer? Was it suspended? So we have a workaround, but yeah, I would totally agree with you. Largely, that's been a huge issue for the custody population and trying to get them into services. But thankfully, we have great providers that we work with that will work with us and will take the person to social services when they've released out of custody. That's actually part of their contract, where they take the person to restart the Medi-Cal process wherever we left it off, and we move it forward. So yeah.
So I would say I do think this is an area we're going to need to dig in a little bit, because I actually think because we take everybody, that shouldn't be a barrier. So I would just want to encourage us to dive into that, and thank you for that information. Pablo, you will have the last word on this. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Her hand was up, so if you
Go
want to
ahead. Thank you, Erin.
I was just going to say, hopefully, part of this 90-day in-reach, and I think that there's still something pending at the federal level that'll make all of this a whole lot easier, so that when you're planning the exit, people exit with a Medi-Cal. But as Gabby said, that should not be an impediment to anybody getting the care or getting the referral. So just raise a ruckus if that comes up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question a little bit, Gabby, on the ECM, because I think ECM is becoming something like system of care where it may get used in multiple different ways. So just want to clarify, because what I think what your community workers are doing is absolutely amazing. Are your ECM clients open through Santa Clara Family Health Plan or whichever plan they've got, or is this kind of separate? Because that's, to my understanding, a very light touch program. It's care coordination.
Yeah, that's why
and this is pretty intensive.
Yeah, that's why we combine the behavioral health services as well. So we don't just say, okay, well, you're open to ECM. Good luck with that. That's why we work together in tandem, because it's a very light touch. It's housing support, medical support, but then there's the whole behavioral health, the psychiatric medications that we still need to manage, psychiatric care, case management, one-on-ones, the therapy aspect. So I always say it's a nice complement to what we're doing that would not be services that we would normally provide. It complements what we do on the behavioral health side. And yeah, it's a light touch. It's for 6 months, where behavioral health is long-term, but it's a nice augment to give somebody. And it also helps us ensure that people are connected to that primary care, which they don't a lot of times have. And that's part of what we do with our providers too, ensuring that primary care connection through the VMC system or through their plan that they have designated.
Thank you. Pablo. Thanks. That's a helpful question.
Just to kind of to wrap two things, what you were talking about earlier around the one mentor, or trying to identify and push together one individual. That's a huge undertaking, and I know we've discussed it. That's when we start to figure out how individuals sometimes get passed from one resource to another, or from one agency to another, where we count them as successful, say in behavioral health, and then we see them in Office of Supportive Housing, or we see them in reentry. And so we're spending the same money, but it's going in a circle. and what you're talking about by, that there's pros and cons, but at the same time, that's a box, you know, so I'm glad to hear that that's something that's coming out as taking a look at, because it's the individual that suffers. You know, like I said, we talk about resources and being limited. I believe the shortage is the most limited resource is hope, you know, and so as we're passing people through those different systems, the hope goes with it as well. So that was the first thing. The second thing I just wanted to think about, which piggybacks on that, is that we had a gentleman come up here and speak about his success, you know, of navigating and advocating for himself, and all those things is part of the design, like the spirit of why I think we started the reentry work to begin with. But taking a look beyond that, you know, the 1 year, 5 year point where an individual's been home for 2 years, has done everything that they could to be successful, and then still ends up homeless, or in those spaces where there has to be a way to look and be thinking beyond what our measures of success are, because while he mentioned that he was a success story and he was given the great work that the Reentry Center did with him, at the same time, the ability for reentry to help an individual stops at a certain point. And so where sometimes we're passing individuals from system to system, I think that if we take a look at it, we could do it, because we're doing it anyway, but do it in an effective way, in a smart way, like you were talking about building the boxes out before you create the plan before you build the box. Just, we're already doing that same type of thing, but taking a look at how we could do it in a more effective way, so that these success stories and these individuals that are not recidivating and doing everything that we're asking them to do aren't ending up homeless or moving to another county or et cetera.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to close this and just say, Gabby, amazing work, really, truly. Both Michelle, but all the work that you've done to really engage behavioral health with our clients has just been remarkable, truly. With that, I'm going to close our meeting, and we are adjourned till Friday, September 27th. Thank you all very, very much.